So you saw that news breaking earlier today. Government schools going to stay closed until the 15th of February because of COVID-19. Meanwhile, Amnesty International has been looking at the infrastructure in our schools. They found at least 239 schools in South Africa don't have any electricity at all. Can you imagine trying to rely on the sun for light in a classroom? You know, a cloudy day, can the children even see the board? Is there a board at all? Or not having any access to hot water. I mean, no way to make a hot drink for children in winter, just as an example. Jenny Wells is a campaigner at Amnesty International. She's been looking at this. Jenny, good afternoon to you. Where are these schools that tend not to have electricity? And I'm afraid to say my immediate suspicion is Limpopo in the Eastern Cape.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks so much for having me on. You're right. We released a report last year, 2020 February, where we looked at schools, particularly in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. And in the report, we included the statistic, which was actually a government statistic, which is shocking, considering that all people in South Africa, especially public schools, have the right to access electricity. National policy states that government has an obligation.
Oh dear, we seem to have lost Jenny Wells there from Amnesty International. I'm not sure if we're going to get her back. It has just gone after 4 o'clock, so I don't know if load shedding. I think she's back with us now. Jenny Wells, you still with us?
I am. I'm not sure what happened there.
All right, one of those things. You're talking about government statistics, yes.
Yeah, I was just talking that it's shocking that this number of schools don't have access to electricity when access to electricity is a right. Governments have an obligation to provide a reliable and safe source of electricity to all public schools. We know that not having access to electricity interferes with the right to education, which is enshrined in our constitution, and along with the lack of other completely insufficient infrastructure problems, it drives poor quality of education and educational outcomes.
Has there been progress in getting electricity into schools? I mean, have we found that more and more schools are getting electricity? Has there been at least some progress here?
We can't comment on that because we have yet to go back and re-look at our statistics and re-measure what's been going up on the progress. We had aimed to do that last year, but we're hoping to get out there this year and update those statistics. I would not be surprised if there has not been progress. We know that the state of provision of basic services and infrastructure in schools in South Africa has been appalling, particularly over the last year with COVID. We've seen it with a lack of PPE for teachers, for students. We've seen overcrowded classrooms, no kind of social distancing. We know that provision of water and sanitation in schools is still a serious problem. We actually found last year that 1 in 3 South Africans do not have access to clean and safe water. In a year in which water is imperative to staying healthy, to preventing the spread of the pandemic. So it's a serious crisis that we're facing in public schools in South Africa.
We know that there are a large number of schools in South Africa that don't have proper water and sanitation. Is there a big overlap? Are we suggesting, I mean, from what you've looked at, is it the schools that don't have electricity are also the schools that tend not to have water and sanitation?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a definite overlap between the two. Often we find that schools, as you say, that don't have access to electricity also don't have access to water and sanitation. Although this issue of water and sanitation is so widespread, it also goes beyond the schools that don't have access to electricity. Schools are still using illegal pit latrines, and this is not to the fault of the school. This is the government not providing safe, clean, legal toilet facilities for kids. We've seen children die in illegal pit latrines. We've seen health complications with children for not having safe and clean access to sanitation. So it's a serious problem. And it's an issue that we looked at very closely last year through one of our campaigns. And we were actually tracking the progress of water in the country. And I know that the government had committed to providing 20,000 water tanks. And at the end of last year, just before the end of last year, we had tracked that they had only provided 11,000. So there's still a lot of work to do. We know that it's not a surprise to us, but we're really, really, really hoping and calling on the government, particularly now while they've got an extra 2 weeks before schools go back, to ensure that all schools have adequate, safe, sufficient infrastructure, water and sanitation, and of course, access to electricity.
There's a norms and standards document, and this has been the subject of court case after court case because your colleagues at Equal Education, I mean, they're a different organisation, but in this case, they're sort of working in the same sphere as you. They've been to court several times to try and get this norms and standards document implemented. I mean, I'm presuming that that document, it's a basic education document, it's a government document. I'm presuming it makes certain promises around electricity at schools.
It does. And this isn't the only document that's available out there. These documents they make ample provision and obligation on the state to provide these kind of things. I was just actually looking at the National Policy for Equitable Provisioning of the Enabling School Physical Teaching and Learning Environment, which is another comprehensive document, but it says that all states and government in South Africa has an obligation to eradicate all mud structures and other unsafe buildings, of which there are a lot. They have to ensure the provision of safe, basic potable water supplied to all schools. They have to eradicate pit latrines, bucket latrines, and provide safe sanitation facilities that promote health and hygiene standards, provision of perimeter fencing, and in that document is the provision of reliable and a safe source of electricity. So as with many things in South Africa, we have the legislation, we have it all written up and ready to go, and it just totally lacks implementation. And that's where we kind of come in. The civil society organizations, our fantastic colleagues at Equal Education, Section 27, really working so hard to make sure that these norms, standards, documents, policies are adhered to so that the future of South Africa and our children can thrive.
Jenny, I mean, I'm a journalist, so I'm always going to oversimplify things and I'm going to, try and solve difficult problems, complex problems in just one sentence. And I appreciate that. But it seems to me, I mean, just from what you've been saying and from other conversations I've had with people in this sector, sanitation, you usually need to be connected to a much bigger sanitation network. If you're going to have a flush toilet, for example, and everyone wants their child to be able to use a flush toilet at school, it has to be connected to a pipe. That pipe has to be connected with somewhere. The sewage has to go somewhere. Electricity, it's much cheaper to be connected to a network, but you can also do it through a generator. Now, you can go to Macro or any of the competitors and buy a generator that would run a house for, 5,000 Rand. So let's, for argument's sake, these schools are often not massive institutions. Say, for argument's sake, you're looking at 20,000 Rand for some kind of generator. It wouldn't cost a lot of money to get these generators to 239 schools. I mean, this could be done for about 10 million Rand, possibly less.
You're right, and I'm no kind of mathematician or financial expert at all. I just look at human rights, but yeah, I mean, the resources are there. Of course, we have many competing interests at the moment, healthcare being a huge one where resources need to go. But as you say, it's simple, it's doable, it's there. There's, we know that the opportunity even for renewable energy, green energy to come in and make this even more simple and cheaper, which would provide jobs, is there. It's on the table. Government know this. We've been talking to them about this for a while, and they're just choosing not to listen. They're choosing not to act. We have the funds. The funds are there. They can be diverted or put into education, improving it. And that's the thing, is that when you invest in education, we are putting in preventative measures for example, at a school where you have unsafe water and sanitation, that's going to get kids sick. Sick kids are then going to go to a hospital and need to rely on healthcare where there aren't beds. So if we fix the problem at the core, kids won't need to go to the hospital and put pressure on the healthcare system. So we want preventative measures at the core, but then also, of course, an investment for the future, And as you say, it's a simple thing. There are so many fantastic, um, alternatives, renewable alternatives, small organizations, small businesses coming up with fantastic ideas on how to create energy, on how to harness electricity differently. And it's all there. We just need to listen and we need to act on it soon and fast.
Jenny Wells, thanks very much indeed. A campaigner at Amnesty International. Really do appreciate the time. Such an important issue. As Jenny says, it does seem that there are solutions to this. Something should